Hey, everybody, welcome to TV Chef Fantasy League, the podcast that is currently coming to you from two continents. I am your host and commissioner, Mike Cablon. Joining me via Zoom today are my co hosts, Ifi Wadiwe and Sierra Cato, the latter of whom is currently in Italy. Sierra, give us the breakdown. What's going on over there?
Oh man, Italy, it's been great. I just arrived in Rome recently. So a couple days ago, hit the ground running here. Got a lot of pasta already.
I was going to
Had a
say, what's like the best
bucatini.
bite? Yeah, okay,
Oh
bucatini.
yeah, yeah. I recently had a bucatini della aranciata. Aranciata. I probably
Whoa, an
said that
orange
wrong, but
bucatini?
oh no, it's like a tomato sauce
Oh,
and a
arrabbiata.
oh yeah, but this one was
Wow. So
aranciata,
you're
I think. I'll look it up,
I
but
studied abroad in Rome and I've been back twice since
yeah.
then, so
You know
it's
what you're talking
possible,
about.
or I'm
I got
saying
a little
something
Italian
completely
rattling
wrong.
around up
I
here.
believe
Yeah.
it. I believe there is an arrabbiata. Wait, Dylan's here. What did I eat tonight? Oh, alla
Amatriciana.
matriciana. Sorry.
That was Buddha's Marry Me pasta from his finale
Oh,
in World
Buddha's
All
Marry
Stars.
Me.
Yeah.
Top Chef. Oh my gosh. I mean, and speaking of, there is no Master Chef here. So
Okay,
I
this
have
was the
to,
big
I
question.
regret to inform the listeners that I'm coming in a little cold. I did read a synopsis online. I think like
Okay.
Bowl Derby or something does these great summaries. And have read some of the Reddit threads, but I am coming in without having seen the footage. So I'm going to lean on you, Mike and Iffy, to fill me in. But of course,
That's
That's
what I was
fine.
gonna say
I
is
know the outcomes.
you're our ear to the street on the like what the streets are saying, the
The
Reddit threads
Italian
and stuff.
streets, the
Yeah.
I'm trying. Yeah,
vias.
I'm trying to get back in. Yeah, and there's an active Reddit for MasterChef, which is delightful.
Mm.
Not surprising there, but I think it's maybe a little bit more on the TV watching ends, as like maybe not as loyal to MasterChef, but more just like, man, they say generations a lot, or like
They really
just like
producers
pointing
really
out
playing up the
stuff.
generations
Oh
this
yeah, they
season.
need you
Yeah.
to know. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah, so
Okay.
that's all I know.
Amazing. Iffy, thank you also for joining me from your place that is 15 minutes away from my place. We
Yeah.
honestly could have been in the same room, but here we are.
Yeah, we made
Uh,
a choice.
yeah, exactly. Iffy came to my band played a show last night, and Iffy was there. It was great.
Yes.
A lot of
Oh
fun.
yeah. You crushed it.
Thank you.
I don't it's funny because it's not like I didn't think you would like crush, but you are really I
Wait,
think
hold
you
on. Your expectations were that low. You're like, I didn't think it would be good.
well, no, it's not that I didn't think it would be good, but I feel like for as good as you are, you really downplay the fact that you shred on the guitar very regularly, and
Thank
it
you.
has never come
Oh
up in
shit.
our season of talking. You just very and the way you said it too, you're like, oh yeah, I do this. My band plays.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, no one ever wants to hear a guy who's like, I can shred a guitar. You know what I mean? Like the same guy who like brings a guitar to a party. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy.
Well,
Rather
you
under
can be.
For
promise, over
sure.
deliver.
You
Oh
you
yeah.
can be. In spite of even my weird ass video freezing.
Yeah, what happened there? All right, there we go. You're back. Cool. Well,
I'm
thank you so
so bummed I
much.
missed it. The video looked awesome. If you did send a good video over the group
Oh
chat,
yeah, I didn't
and
want you to miss.
obviously Manny, referencing Top Chef again. Did Manny
That's
show up?
right. No, he didn't show up. He was too busy. I don't know. I guess living in a different city in America and getting married. So
Wow,
I don't know. That's on him.
the nerve.
The nerve.
Weird.
Hey, folks, if you love our show, you can head to MaximumFun.org/join to become a member, select TV Chef Fantasy League. That money goes back to us. That's the best way to support the show directly. Just want to get that out of the way up top before we start talking about this episode, or just MasterChef in general. I actually want to shout out Kamei, who is the first contestant on the show to start following us on Instagram. So you can be like Kamei and follow us at TV Chef Fantasy League. Kamei, what's up? Thanks for
What to
listening.
do?
And the last thing I want to talk about before we get started is we learned this week that the next season of Top Chef is going to be in Canada, which we very quickly group texted about. But I want to hear your live reactions. What is going to happen? Because there is a Top Chef
Right.
Canada. So what happens to that show?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I guess it probably I would hope continue, or maybe they do a US one. We swap seas, little wife swap.
Yeah,
There's
that's what I was
also, yeah,
that's what I was wondering because one of the things we were talking about was the fact that we couldn't do, a Top Chef, not Top Chef Canada because it was hard to get. And we were like, it's in Canada. Why is it so hard to see that? And now they're like, well, it's because we're going to Canada.
Yeah, exactly. They had to sort of protect their assets so they could, do a timed release later on. That makes sense.
Sure.
All right. Let's start talking about this episode of MasterChef, the first full-fledged competition episode of the season. We're not doing auditions anymore. Initial reactions, Sierra, let's start with you because you didn't see it, but based on what you read, how are you feeling about the competition so far?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had some hunches when watching the auditions, like who was actually going to be able to deliver, and I feel like some came true and then some were surprising. So I think it's like you just really don't like. I'm surprised how little we know about them and how how we've talked about it's very produced and edited, so they can kind of show us what we need to know and use whatever story to kind of help that episode. So I kind of was like, yeah, kind of a balance of like, hey, I was right. I didn't think that person was gonna do so hot. I mean, we'll get to it, but I kind of was like, you know, I think a big thing on Reddit was surprised about C because he was very, not to skip to the end, but I think though he just had such a great story that it kind of served its purpose in the audition round. So I don't know. It's good. It's good to kind of see how things are unraveling. No pun intended.
No, yeah. Well, which by the way, when we were doing the draft, I kept calling him Psy, and it wasn't. I just forgot how his name was pronounced, and it's C. I was wrong. So, but it doesn't matter anymore because now he's gone. Spoiler alert. Iffy, how you feeling? Just general reactions to the start of the competition.
Already feeling better than Top Chef. Already got one of my guys.
Low bar.
Oh no.
Already got one of my guys in the top. Even though we didn't take the dub, I'm feeling good. And it seems like Sierra, it seems like it's already a rough start,
Yeah.
I was going to bring it up, but
it was scary for me though, because that was like one of your folks and two of mine. And I was like, how are we doing this again?
Yeah.
It can't happen.
Yeah, I wrote the top and the bottom this episode, so it's a wild ride, and again, just proves the point that anything can happen in fantasy cooking competition shows. I do want to talk about the points a little bit because this episode was to do dishes inspired by your childhood, and one of our points is saying that like this dish is inspired by my mom, my dad, whoever, and no one explicitly said that, so I'm gonna rule no points for this episode just because
I felt the same way.
Yeah. It's if the prompt is like we want you to be inspired by your upbringing, then the point should go for like whoever explicitly says it. No one explicitly said this is inspired by my mom or my dad or whoever. So we're just gonna go no points there. Let's dive into the episode. So we intro the episode. The hosts tell us that whoever cooks the best dish earns an immunity pin. They're safe from elimination the next challenge, and their entire generation is safe from elimination that night. The worst dish gets eliminated, and then we introduce the mystery boxes, which everyone was like, "Oh, it's a big deal that we're doing the mystery boxes on day one." And I'm like, "It's not that. It's like the mystery box challenge is not significantly better or worse than any of the other challenges." So I was like, "Okay, you can stop kind of overproducing it here." But under the mystery box were childhood photos on clearly fake phones and cameras, and the secret ingredient was you. And the challenge was to take a nostalgic comfort food from your childhood, transform into a modern restaurant worthy dish. And let's just go through some of the people. I'll call out some people. When you have a comment, jump in. The first person to speak is Arthur, who said he wants to take out the millennials, and I was like, okay, so we're on the same page here. Because we all drafted millennials first. I think millennials are the ones to beat this season.
Oh, sure.
And by the way, no one told me, because I missed his audition episode, that Arthur's an Asian guy with a blonde white wife. I'm like, I should have drafted him based on that. That's, representation matters.
No,
folks.
I think I specifically had to, keep that from you because I wanted to draft him and then I got him. So
sneaky.
But he was he's a strong candidate. And he has the cute, his story was about like once he had his daughter and everything. Like
right.
And then so his wife was there with the daughter as well. But she wasn't as a part of his original story.
Yeah. The daughter's the inspiration for sure. If he makes it to the end, he's gonna get the I'm doing this for my daughter points. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Right.
And then we start the shopping. The boomers are all the last ones to the pantry, which I'm like, the producers told them to go slower, right? There's no way they were actually
they moved so slow, and then they made such a big deal of like being like, gotcha. Look at how slow
Oh
they
my
are. The
God.
boomers, you know.
This
But
is
yeah, sorry, go for it.
Oh no, sorry. I was just saying this is the kind of details they leave out of the Gold Derby summary online. I didn't know that the boomers ended up being slow to the pantry, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it was very like the Gen Zers like bolted into the pantry and then bolted right out, and then like the boomers just kind of gently shuffled in, and then they're like, "Oh, these kids are elbowing me to get a grape or whatever." You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna go through just like the characters that popped out at me in this episode. I'm gonna start with Geegs, who made his shepherd's pie. And the first thing he did is he was like mixing the potatoes by hand. He's like, "Yeah, we don't need electric blenders for my generation." I was like, "Bro, you don't blend mashed potatoes anyway, so that would produce bad mashed potatoes." He talks about how his mom was on welfare with 4 kids, tugging at the heartstrings, but he didn't put any vegetables in his lamb for the shepherd's pie. And then he didn't get a chance to put it under the broiler. So when they're going around tasting it, he's got this big pool of fat like dripping out
Oh
of it. And I'm like,
no.
Geegs, you're the health guy. Shouldn't you be the last one with like a pool of fat sitting on top of your dish? You know what I mean? It just felt very out of character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Geek's whole thing. Health food and
Yeah,
yeah,
that
and
I
I
that
think
w- oh yeah. You know, if you
oh sorry,
we're
I'll
Look,
this is
just say
folks,
yours.
we're
sorry,
figuring out
once
how to do this
Yeah.
via Zoom.
Yeah, as you know, as our long
the
time, chef
delay.
gang has known, we jump on each other all the time because we get excited. So yeah, we're gonna have some of that, pure Zoom delay. But what I will call out is, yeah, I screamed at the TV when that happened because it wasn't just grease. It was like so much
Yeah.
and he made such a big deal about it. Speaking of, this is a sidebar. My friend who I said auditioned for Top Chef and was like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever, found out that I mentioned it on the episode because one of his friends goes, is if he talking about you here? Because he like very publicly posted that he did it, and he was like, I got some audition stories, so we might have to have some
Whoa.
like
Ooh.
Wow.
audition, story time so we can get a little inside look at the process. Because maybe there's a world where Geeks just happen to be a fit old dude, and then they're like, oh, he's
He's
a
eye candy.
yeah, so we're gonna say you're the fitness guy, and it's like, oh no, I'm just like an
Oh.
old guy.
Oh wow.
You're here for the widows to have something to look at while they're watching the show. You know what I mean?
Oh
Yeah.
no. Yeegs. Yeah. I mean, the shepherd's pie was a pretty common mention in the Reddit thread, I think. People were pretty appalled by it.
I mean, I'm genuinely stoked, Sierra, that you have already shifted and started checking out the MasterChef Reddit. I think another, sidebar I want to take, much like, you told us how last season the overall vibe was that, people thought that the Top Chef season wasn't weak. We disagreed with it. But what is the overall vibe for the MasterChef,
Great question.
online fandom? Are they hyped? Are they excited about the generations or
I think they feel like it's already overdone, but I wonder if they feel this way. Like, I don't know if they feel this way every time about, maybe during the regions, they were like, shut up with these US regions. So I don't know if there's always like the theme is always be, a thousand times. So, but yeah, it does seem like I think the whole theme is wearing on people. And the fact that, certain contestants, I think they're like, man, there's some really rough looking food here. I
yeah,
guess
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
they were, critical of the pie, the meatloaf, those types of things.
yeah, and while we're on the like low lights, Mert fucking pissed me
Mert,
off.
here
Oh,
we go.
Mert,
Let's talk
yes.
Mert
Mert.
fucking
Sorry,
pissed
yeah,
me off.
Mert's another
I was
one.
like, okay, this is gonna be my star. He's already covering the shit talk stuff.
You picked him because he was a
Yeah,
villain.
I was like, oh, he's gonna like lean into it, and I'm sure the producer was like, yeah. And then you make this weird clump of stuff
Oh,
that doesn't even look good. Like, and I am a curry stan. Japanese curry is my favorite thing.
sure.
That's what M made me. That made me make her my girlfriend.
Cute.
Yeah, like I'm a curry stan, and I love. It looked like good, and the green tea rice seemed good, but it just seemed like when me and him were watching, we were like, Gen Z feels like they should be the standout because the culture of food that even brings a podcast like ours out is at its highest with Gen Z. Like every video is like a cooking thirst trap thing for them on TikTok. They're like real into like knife skills, and seeing that sloppy curry mess, I was
Yeah.
like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it was kind of weird from conception because I not that a mango chicken curry is like unheard of, but it's usually in the form of like a chicken curry with like a little mango like sambal or like something on the side. Like doing a savory mango dish is really hard to do. In fact, I just remembered this. There's a new flavor of Doritos that is like a mango habanero Dorito, and like a friend of mine
Hmm.
saw it at CVS and was like, I bought this bag. Let's try this. It is so bad. It is the worst Dorito I've ever had. And it's like, look, Doritos are
Oh,
like engineered. Those are chemicals, right? They're supposed to taste good. I don't know how they missed the mark so badly. It's like an offensively taste Dorito.
I'm surprised. Yeah, I feel like on the surface, I'd be like, that's interesting. Like a sweet and savory
Yeah.
situation could be good, but that's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. So the mango like concept was weird to me. I get the inspiration, which by the way, he said he was half Brazilian, grew up in Brazil, didn't see that coming, and that like it I don't want to say it endears me to him a little bit, but it was like a point against his villain arc. It was like, oh, there is something more interesting here than just like some tool white kid. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's like,
look, I was about to say, at the risk of having yet another one of my Max Fun shows piss off a bunch of white people because I talk about how there's too much representation for them. I will say that yes, I too was like, oh, it is pretty tight that we have, yeah, it's not just like a white dude. It is like
yeah.
a like very interesting take on it. But yeah, that's Max Film. We say it's a movie podcast that isn't just three straight white dudes, and you wouldn't believe how hurt
Oh,
people
sure.
are,
Oh, of
which
course.
which makes it weird to me because I'm like, is that why you're watching it? Are you like, I need a take from white dudes?
There aren't enough white opinions on film.
Yes, we need it.
When you said that, it's like somebody's serving a dish, and this is my take on white dudes.
Yes.
This is a twist, a Brazilian twist.
I do kind of feel like
Okay.
there's like weirdly coded messaging that you could read into if you wanted to about like a lot of the Gen X and boomer dishes, like meatloaf, like things that are like American classics are kind of just white people. You know what I mean? It's not that far removed from like old school recipe books where we would make weird beef gelatins and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know. It is like it, but something weird like that getting revamped might have been a slapper.
That's true. That's true. If
Yeah.
Mert could have revived something from a 1960s cookbook instead of trying weird Gen Z, he was like, I got the green tea rice idea from TikTok. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to say on national TV to be like,
Yeah.
I got this idea from someone else. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
I mean,
Sure.
well, it's very much I am kind of glad that they're separate audiences. I even though we're both doing it, I feel like the mass demographic for MasterChef and Top Chef, while there's a Venn diagram, are very different because I feel like your typical Top Chef person, we would have already had a salon think piece about how we're
Oh, yeah.
watching appropriation live on TV via TikTok,
Oh, yeah.
which is always like
Oh,
I like it's a fine line to walk if we're gonna have this discussion, and I feel like we're none of us are white, so this is free reign, and I'm always open to all ideas. But the like food appropriation discussion is always funny because I was like, I get it when it is like a um what was that one like fancy cooking YouTube that was racist and then everyone left it.
Oh, Bon Appetit?
Yeah, like
Or,
if
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, like
okay.
when it's a Bon Appetit chef that's like, here's this new fresh thing. It's like a maize-based
Right.
baked chef, and it's like, no, that's a freaking tamale, and you
Right.
change the
Oh yeah,
name.
that
Like
has
Right.
that's
existed. Uh-huh.
appropriation. But I think if a white person's like, hey, I like learned how to make,
Right.
a katsu, pork katsu. I'm
Right.
making it. It's a tonkatsu. Now that it's stuck in my head after a discussion we had
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
right, the spelling.
um, You know,
Have to
like
say,
that to me, it's not the same. But I think when you get into the hyper online verse, people don't know how to differentiate those two things and just
Hmm.
get mad about it. Where it's like, why is this white dude making green tea rice? It's like, oh, because it's good to share food, question mark.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that there are a lot like the generation right before us, I think there were a lot of popular chefs running a lot of popular restaurants in America who were like, this is a guy who like lived in Mexico for a long time. And so he's an expert on Mexican food, even though he's a white guy. And then there was kind of this wave of like, oh, should we be eating at these kinds of restaurants? And it's like, I'm not saying that's the end all be all of Mexican food, but there is room to say, well, if you lived in Mexico for 30 years and you studied the cuisine, I think you're allowed to cook it a little. You know what I mean?
for
Yes.
sure. Yeah, and I think it's clear. It's like evident too, where people seem to make the distinction of like somebody doing it respectfully and like
Right.
understanding the basics in order to change it, and then somebody not understanding it and then changing it for the worse out any sort of understanding of what they're doing. So yeah, so it's like kind of a interesting question of like, oh, did this person come from a point of like, I mean, we have so many Top Chef contestants, not to go back there, but it's like that have the background, and so they kind of approach it from an angle of expertise that can be
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cool and different. But then there's totally the flip side where it's like just making money without respecting
Right.
what's going
Yeah.
on. But
Yeah. Okay, the last thing I wrote about Mert is he on coke? Question mark because he also was like, yeah, so this is like the best version of this I've ever made, and like his workstation was a mess. Like the judges pointed out that like his pans were everywhere. I'm like, this guy is very unorganized in a way where
sure.
I'm vaguely concerned about his health. Anyway,
Maybe
that's the
he's
last
just
thing I
drinking
did.
Prime. I feel like that's big in Gen Z.
Okay,
All
yeah,
the kids
sure.
like Logan Paul, is that his name? His energy drink. Apparently they asked for it for Christmas from their
Yeah.
parents because
Whoa,
they're
really?
not allowed to purchase
Whoa.
it in store. Well, because I think like you maybe need to be 18 or something, or they
Yeah.
stop selling it directly to kids. And
Yeah.
it's got a shit ton of caffeine. It can't be good for your heart. So
Yeah, there's a lot of like hidden caffeine stuff because it has good branched chain amino acids. And I was so stoked because they don't put, yes, Iffy Meathead is out again. But like I was so stoked because I didn't know that it was connected to him. And then once I found out it was connected to Jake Paul, I was like, well, fuck me. I like this Jake Paul product. But yeah, they have the energy drink version with a bunch of caffeine, but I think it's very much labeled as energy things. And I'm calling Panera Killer Lemonade on this because I
Mm-hmm.
remember when people were like, "Oh, I didn't know this had caffeine," and it's literally called supercharged lemonade. Like, what
Yeah.
did you think the supercharged was? What was the supercharged?
Gasoline.
You know,
ooh.
like it was, and I'm mad because you used to be able to get it right next to the fountain drinks, and now you got to give it to them. They still give you free refills though, just so you know. Killer lemonade heads like me, you can get the refills.
Are
So then
you
what does that protect? Like, do they screen you or like look
Basically, it's
at
so
you
that
and go, you can handle it?
when you're asking for more, they're very much like it, it has caffeine. Or they're probably,
Oh,
if you're on
right.
your like third or fourth, they're like, hey, hey,
We
relax.
got to cut you off.
Yeah, we got to cut you off. I think your heart's had enough.
Oh boy. Yeah, so maybe that's what Mert had, the death lemonade, killer lemonade.
the
Yeah.
But
death
he I
lemonade?
mean, it's truly, yeah, I mean, I remember from his audition that he was doing lots and saying lots of things fast. But also, yes, he's big on the Reddit thread, a big
He's a
non-favorite.
big personality. I think he's going to
Yeah,
stick around
nobody
on the
likes
show for
him,
a while
unfortunately.
just because the producers are like, he's good television. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about Sunshine and her lamb shank, which the big thing here was, I mean, this would not be out of place on an episode of Top Chef. They're like, you got to get that in the pressure cooker right now. It's not enough time to cook that much lamb shank. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I was, there was a lot of things that they were doing that, and I'm gonna say this for the first 3 episodes, but where I realized, oh, this is a home cook's chef's the in my mind,
Mm.
in my mind, I did not know there was a valley between the two. I did, and because I have a friend, mythical chef Josh here, who's like, he does the chef stuff for Mythical Kitchen, and I'm always like, oh, you should do Top Chef. He was like, I would never be able to do Top Chef. Top Chef, you need to know how to break down the whole, you need to know how to do the butcher stuff. I haven't been to culinary school, all this, even though we've seen many times people who haven't been to culinary school, but that's other stuff.
Yeah.
But and I was like, okay. And then he was like, but it was like MasterChef. He's like, oh, I could do MasterChef. He's like, I can see myself on MasterChef. But then I'm looking at MasterChef, I'm like, no, you're too good for MasterChef.
Too good.
And
yeah.
then M was like, oh, he's
Oh.
disqualified because technically he is a professional cook.
Right,
Like,
right.
because
You
he
could do a
does it-
chopped or
Oh.
something.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. But either
Yeah.
way, it is funny to see just that valley of like home.
mhm.
Like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I think all three of us have a shot at MasterChef. I think we need sadder stories. But after watching this,
Wow.
and this isn't a diss because some of these dishes, it's so obvious some of the insider stuff we know. It's so obvious that
Sure.
Rebecca has been on a cooking show before. That plating was
Yes.
nuts.
Yes.
It's very interesting how middling what was it? Hannah's the Mormon, right?
Oh, Becca, I think is her name.
Becca.
Becca.
Yeah.
It was interesting how middling Becca was because we know that Becca went to culinary school. So that's
Right.
so those are kind of the
Well, I'll say we don't know if she went to culinary school before or after she filmed this season of
Ooh.
MasterChef. You know what I mean?
Right.
She could have like,
clarification.
in fact,
She's
she
young.
might be the one where when she gets eliminated, Gordon's like, I'm going to pay for your culinary school tuition.
Ooh.
We don't
Oh.
know. We'll
Oh,
see.
yeah.
Points,
Oh, yeah.
points.
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 Yeah, no, this is, I know I always talk about Below Deck, but this is also evident on Below Deck because they always get like a new chef on the ship, and that chef works alone. They're trying to feed like all the guests and the whole crew by themselves. And sometimes they're like, I owned a restaurant, I trained at this place. And sometimes they're like, I trained myself and I Google all my recipes. You know what I mean? It's just like, as long as you can get the food out and people aren't complaining, that's like all that matters, you know?
I mean,
Yeah.
it does seem like MasterChef, and again, we'll see as the season progresses, but it's like maybe just come in with like a handful or like 10 good recipes that you can really nail and
Right.
like kind of could fit into this category. Cause I feel like you could make up a story, like even if it's like,
Yeah.
this mystery box one, obviously I think one of them would definitely fit into that category, but there's definitely some wiggle room. So I was surprised when I saw that, people were just trying out new stuff they'd never really thought of before or
Right.
whatever,
Okay. So speaking of,
because- yeah.
I brought up Sunshine because she does say at one point in this episode, she's never cooked lamb shank in a pressure cooker. Now I bring this up because one of our points, one of our rules is saying, I'm from blank, we don't have blank, or I've never made this dish before, or I don't cook with this a lot. I am leaning toward ruling no points here. And mind you, Sunshine's on my team. It would behoove me to award points to Sunshine, but I think that the spirit of the rule is like comical inexperience, like saying, I'm from Texas, we don't have scallops.
Oh, right.
And it's not, the rule is not about experimentation. She said she's never cooked lamb shank in a pressure cooker, which to me is not the same thing as saying I've never seen lamb shank, you know what I mean? So I'm going to say no points there.
Yeah, I'd say it.
All right, if it's approved by the
'cause,
league.
Yeah. I think that's what when we were talking about this last episode, that, it's more about like saying that something doesn't exist in their world.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So no points there. All right. Last person I want to talk about in depth before we get into the tops here is Daniela with her sarma, her Serbian smoky stuffed cabbage roll, which was basically raw. She didn't cook her cabbage. And I wrote down, this was my biggest laugh of the episode when they were looking, like walking around doing their little look-sees. Aaron Sanchez said, Daniela, do you think that cabbage would have benefited from being cooked in that sauce? And Daniela said, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, their replies are so great. And I think what's great is all of it. Like I said, first 3 episodes, there's going to be a lot of connections between our seasons. There's going to be connective tissue.
Mhm.
I wish there was like a dinner term I could have, I could use as a in between thing, a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
But it makes me. To me, remember how many times I would talk about how someone is obviously getting a leading question from a judge in Top Chef, and they kind of either don't acknowledge it or they don't say anything, and you're just like, oh, they miss it. What's funny about when it happens here is the sound cue that usually goes with it, where it's like boom, like when like and it shows Joe like making a disgusted face.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's once again, it's a TV show first and a cooking competition second. They want the big facial reactions and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah. It is truly, truly wild. And so it's so fun. It makes it fun to watch because I think this is going to be the goofier of our seasons, because we're just going to be doing it's going to be such a wild freaking show. Like it's like complimentary. Everything that is happening
Wild
is
and goofy
so
parentheses
wild.
complimentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's take a look at our closer look dishes. So once again, you get a half point if the judges take a closer look at your dish. They took a look at 4 of them, one from each generation. They took a closer look from the millennials at Kamei's dish, which was her, I wrote it down. Where is it? Crispy chicken thigh, Haitian red bean sauce, white rice, pickled Fresno chilies, and red onions. The first thing I wrote down is that when she was explaining the dish as she was cooking, I was like, she already sounds like a TV chef. Like she sounds like
Oh,
she
Yeah.
hosts her own
Oh,
show.
baby.
Yeah.
When she was telling C like, hey, like be confident, be confident. I was like, oh, you're ready. You're
Yeah.
ready. I
She's
was
gonna
so
get her own
hyped.
show
mm,
for sure.
Yeah.
She like the content of what she said was so stupid. She's like, my millennial trick is saving time by using canned beans. I'm like, that sounds it sounds like it's from the 90s like Food Network TV show, but just the cadence with which she said it, I was like,
sure.
it sounds like you're on a cooking show. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
She knows how to do a sound bite already.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
She's the lawyer, or she worked something. She had like some really nice
Yes.
headshots in her audition. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I feel like she's a, a go-getter. And I think the fact that she's the first one to follow us on Instagram is also like
Yeah.
telling, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
Big
yeah.
she's
green
like
light, big
after
green
it.
flag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like she's like, hey, listen, it's, I mean, the fact that she did, we certainly want to talk about her more. So
Mhm.
it works all around. Good
Yeah,
business.
Yeah.
Danny was one of the first people to, react to our Top Chef
Oh.
clips, and
Oh yeah.
you saw how that turned out for him.
That's
So,
right. Yeah. So
Oh,
this maybe
wow.
we're how like
Spoilers.
they'll let an octopus pick the Sweet
yeah.
16 or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
whoever likes us or interacts with us first is gonna win the season. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it's so good.
Yeah,
So
I just checked my old notes. Kamei was a lawyer from DC who postponed her honeymoon to be on this show,
Oh,
which
yes.
is
yes, yes. She
yeah.
was
So she's
like,
got a
yeah,
lot
this
on the
is
line. She's
first.
got to go far. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
exactly. Our next closer look is from Gen Z, and this was Adam, who made the only sweet dish of the competition. He made this fried peach pie. Okay, Joe and Aaron Sanchez did this weird bit where they're like, "Oh, but you're using goat cheese for like tang. That's a very Gen Z idea, right? It doesn't identify as a dessert or a savory dish. It doesn't want to be labeled." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why are you?" It's not like explicitly poking fun at like pronouns, but it had that spirit of like, "Oh, Gen Z kids care about not being
Yeah.
labeled." And I'm like, "What do
Mm,
you
don't
get?
be
Who let that in the final edit? You know what I mean?"
Yeah, I know well,
forcing
it's
so hard.
so one thing I was going to say earlier regarding just all of the like kind of like foxisms of everything is
Hmm.
it to me, and this is fun for us because we all work in this industry, it becomes clear just how much a show changes when there isn't like a buffer of a writing team between, like, I think
Yeah, yeah,
network
yeah.
notes, because that feels like a like, oh, this it makes sense because everyone is all these like I can see how they convinced themselves that that was a funny joke and not kind of slightly offensive.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. We could have benefited from some writers giving it a little polish pass before they fire that
Yeah.
one off. Like, yeah, leave
Yeah.
that in the edit.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just reeks of like, oh, we got to do generations. Let's what do we how do we force this goat cheese thing into something? It's like you
Yeah.
just talk about the dish. It doesn't have to be any sort
Yes.
of like commentary on what the kids are doing these days. Like,
Yeah,
leave it.
Literally.
I think it was a little bit safer in the last couple gimmicks to do like United Tastes of America. It's like, yeah, there are some differences between the South and the Northeast. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
sure.
And like that's been
Yeah.
covered. You can approach that respectfully. You can, you know what I mean? You can just be like, oh yeah, we cook a lot of seafood in the Northeast. You don't have that in the Midwest. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
to build ageism into the gimmick of the show is a little bit like, okay, you kind of got to be careful here. And this is one where I was like,
Right.
yeah, you're stepping over
Oh
the
yeah.
line, I think.
Oh, definitely. It's truly proof that yeah, they need they're going to be needing to chill a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Getting a closer look from the baby boomers was Rebecca, who made an elevated meatloaf, which to me, I was like, that's boomer as hell to make a meatloaf. I want to read the exact description of it. Let me find it. Okay. Sorry. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. Blackberry hoisin meatloaf with bok choy and sesame oil and gochugaru potato spears. And not once did anyone address the fact that I don't know what gochugaru is. The audience certainly doesn't know what gochugaru is. How the hell does Rebecca know what gochugaru is?
Yeah.
That struck me as weird.
Well, that's what's so funny, right? Is you're saying, they're trying to do this like generations thing, and I think that they are missing the mark, right? Where that's a good conversation to be like,
Yes.
hey,
Yeah.
how do you know what gochugaru is? And then she can have this time to talk. And instead they're like trying to do like pronoun,
Yeah, exactly.
biffs and boofs.
Right. Chips and yeah, I mean, also I feel like the fun takeaway, and I'm sure we'll get to this. I guess maybe they're trying to build competition between the teams, so they're leaning into all that, all the gifts and gooses you're saying. But it's like, you know, it should be. I feel like there's already quite enough tension between generations, as there is between regions and stuff. So maybe that's about being like, hey, Rebecca, you're a boomer. We stereotype boomers as not knowing what gochugaru is.
Right.
But like,
yeah.
you do, and you're breaking that stereotype. Like, yeah, and sort of relating the generations together, which I'm sure they will do to show that, it's really oftentimes not really about, oh, you're lazy now or whatever, every younger generation, everybody doesn't want to work anymore or whatever. And it ends up being, it's solely because that's just what people do when they're young, or it's actually always been that way for generations. But like everybody looks at the one above them and goes, hey, you guys took all the money or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure it'll come around.
That would be amazing if like Gen Z and millennials are like, hey, by the way, we're all still in debt. Isn't that your guys' fault? Unrelated to cooking?
Yeah. Hey, you know why I didn't have gochugaru on mine is because I couldn't
afford it.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, you told us to stop buying avocado toast, and you had time to learn about gochugaru.
Right. Yeah. I did see like some headline recently that was like, ooh, the young people's new spending habit, groceries.
This hip new trend, food. Think about it. Kind of crazy. I saw this thing about how I don't remember if I talked about it on this podcast. There is a study done recently about just like sentimentality over time, and like one example was like music, and no matter what generation you're in, your music taste tends to peak when you're 19. So it's like everything from when you're born to when you're 19 is like good, it gets better, and then it peaks at 19, and then from 19 to 35 things get worse, and then from 35 onward it's actively bad. You think that, but it's like that's true of every generation. Like It doesn't matter what time period you live in, you always think that the things that are like from your childhood are the best, and that everything before you sucked and everything after you sucks.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so on point. And it's the same for, it's when people get mad that I haven't seen certain movies. I'm like, I'm sorry.
All right, what haven't you seen? What's the big one?
I don't know. I don't want to say it in front of Iffy of Maximum Film.
No, go look. I am the judge-free zone.
Well, I haven't seen The Godfather.
Yeah, I haven't seen it all the way through either.
Okay,
like I've seen bits
and
pieces, but I haven't like sat down to really take it all in.
Boofs.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right, okay.
We're in good company.
Yeah. We're all doing great.
Look, I had undiagnosed ADHD up until like a couple years ago. There was no way young Iffy was going to make it through The Godfather at all.
With 3 hours? No, that's simply too much movie. I've never finished Gangs of New York for that reason, because I get 3 hours in and I'm like, I gotta go eat. You know what I mean? It's too long.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. Okay. And the final closer look was Sunshine. The lamb gamble paid off. The Lamble, if you will, paid off. And she's in the top. Okay, the winner is Rebecca. Rebecca wins with her meatloaf. Points wise, I'm dominating the closer looks here because I had Adam, I had Sunshine, I had Rebecca. Iffy, I believe you had Kamei, so A little bit of points there for you
Yep.
too.
Oh yeah.
And the judges tell Geegs, consider yourself very lucky because he had one of the worst dishes, which again, not surprising. It's the little pool of fat so bad, but he's safe with all the other boomers up on the balcony. I didn't notice until they're all standing up on the balcony that Rebecca's the only woman in the boomer group, which is weird.
Yeah.
And she's going to win. Not because of that, but just also coincidentally, she's going to win. Okay, down at the bottom, our worst dishes from Gen Z. Of course, we have Mert. Of course, he's at the bottom, and of course, he was confused. He was like, "Whoa, what? This is the best I've ever made. This. I guess everyone's either lying to me or like I don't know." And I'm like, "Bro, you're like making yourself more hateable." You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know he's really like, I need him to do that, but not lose. Like, I need him to like stop talking crazy when you're at the bottom. I mean, it was, to me, I for sure thought it was gonna be Mert, but because see, it felt like it it had potential, and I was very scared for C's dish, but like I trust Gordon Ramsay enough. So some of these other guys I'm meeting for the first time, because I often am afraid that like when people are like this is a weird taste, this is a weird taste, it's like a cultural thing and not necessarily like a,
Yes.
so that made me very scared. But I was like, I feel like Gordon Ramsay of all people would at least like, I trust him to know like Vietnamese dishes and know what like actually tastes
Yeah.
good.
I was going to
Nope.
talk about this with
Right.
Daniela, who's also at the bottom. We can skip to
Yeah.
her, but because she made like a cultural dish, you know what I mean? She made a sarma, and they're like, this isn't good. And I feel like this happens sometimes on MasterChef, and I don't know how the public feels about it, but I know how I feel about it, which is that like the optics aren't great when you're like okay, a couple seasons ago there was a woman who is Indian and she got eliminated for cooking like butter chicken or like tandoori or like something Indian, right? And it's this thing where it's like it doesn't look great for a British white guy to be like, this is the worst butter chicken I've ever had.
Oh no.
But what I wish the judges would just say explicitly is like, look, I'm not saying I'm the expert on how to cook butter chicken or sarma or whatever this cultural dish is, because it's specific to you and your culture. But this is bad in a way that is like technical and transcends culture. Do you know what I mean? It's like no culture likes unseasoned food. No culture likes undercooked meat. No culture likes raw cabbage in like a cabbage roll, you know? And so it's like there are these smacks of yeah, that doesn't feel right. But like you said, you just have to trust that it's like, no, this is a guy who has like 20 Michelin stars under his belt. He knows what good food is and he knows what bad food is. And she
Yes.
didn't cook her cabbage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. Is I think because I realize that with the Bravo versus Top Chef stuff, they know that people who are into food
Mm-hmm.
are watching it. So like that is interesting for them to hear all the notes that they got wrong and why they don't like it. And I get that for Fox, they're like, no, they just need good, bad. If we go into the weeds as to what was bad about it,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be lost. But I
Yes.
think I wouldn't hate it for them to try and challenge their viewer base
Yeah.
to say what was wrong, because I think those are the things that help people get better at cooking, even from
Yeah.
a viewer standpoint. I imagine a lot of you OG Top Chef watchers, Mike and Sierra, that there are some things that you see in Top Chef that make you a better cook, because even sometimes when they want to do something and like the chef's like, oh, I don't think that's going to work because I think
Right.
this is going to happen, then I kind of put that away in my brain library of like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this applies a little bit to C at the bottom because they sort of, in my opinion, glossed over why he got eliminated because it was their feedback was mostly like you were too ambitious, like you had this lofty idea for a dish and you didn't execute, but it wasn't. It's almost frustrating because the show wants everything to be so simple, but they didn't give a simple thing where it's like this was raw or this lacked salt. You know what I mean? It was just sort of like we didn't like this dish, which is valid, and I believe that. But this show wants to be so much simpler than that. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a little bit of like push and pull about like the voice of the show when it comes to like criticizing the food. You know?
Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
that's tough. And I think like the thing I noticed too in auditions, and I'm sure they did it again, is like if they're eliminating somebody and they want it to, it's sort of like, look, I like you as a person. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't, as a viewer, I mean, I hope so. They seem like a nice person, unless, they're Mert. But it is like kind of the thing of they have to soften it by being like, look, you're great. And I think because it's not their full career, it doesn't hurt as hard, right? Because their work or their food is still a work in progress. So then they go, but this is not good.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's like simplifies it and maybe makes it more human. And I guess, if it is the sort of thing where they're cooking their cuisine of their culture, then they can be like, well, look, I like you who is a person in that culture.
Nothing against your culture, but this is bad.
Yeah. But I don't eat that because that's gross.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I mean, speaking of his elimination too, I think I remember watching his audition, of course, and he had such a wonderful story and he was so, such somebody you wanted to root for. But even that first thing that he made in his audition was kind of like on the fence, or at least that's the way that the judges played it out to be. So I was like, oh, if he's so passionate about cooking Vietnamese food and this one didn't go so well, what's going to happen in the future? What if he
was not long for this world to begin with?
It's not good. Yeah. So, so I was, not as surprised as maybe I would have been for another elimination, but sad to see his lobster soup not pan out.
Which did I would have eaten it. What are you gonna do? Okay.
Sure.
I don't want to gloss over my favorite criticism, honestly, in many seasons of MasterChef, which is Joe calling Mert's dish spicy baby food. It's the kind of soundbite that, so like, brutal. In the trailer, I'm like, that's golden television. When it played out on live TV, I was like, this is amazing. You can't beat spicy baby food. I love spicy baby food so much.
Yes.
Mert should start it as a line of his new product he'll sell on Instagram.
He seems like the kind of guy who would. Like, he would lean into that. You know what I mean? Like the idiot sandwich. It's just like, yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. God. Spicy baby food.
Meme.
Yeah.
Okay, so C goes home, which means I lose a player on my team. I had the top and the bottom this week, and that's a bummer for me. Okay, next week we're going to do aged foods. That's fun. Y'all ready to do our points breakdown?
Oh, yeah.
Great. As a reminder, you can find our scoring rules on our Instagram at TV Chef Fantasy League. This week, the closer looks went to Kamei, Adam, Sunshine, and Rebecca. That is a half point each. And our winner was Rebecca with 1 point. So that's mostly my team, which means at the end of this episode, Iffy, you gain a half point. It's a good start. Sierra, you gain 0 points. That's a poor start, but I gained.
Where were my guys?
Where were your guys? What happened this week? I gain 2.5 points, which is great. But again, I did lose an entire 1/6 of my team immediately. So my prospects for gaining points are significantly lower now. And as we learned last season, anything could happen. So I don't know. Sierra, how are you feeling about your team not placing this episode?
Well, luckily I didn't have to watch it happen before my eyes, but I was scanning through the summary, when I, trying to at first look out for any names so I could get excited as I read it more detailed. But yeah, nobody really from mine. I mean, Arthur got highlighted in the top for saying he wanted to take out the millennials, and some people got some airtime. But yeah, I'm holding out though. I think that just mainly means they're middling, and I think I'm confident in their picks that they will only get better.
I'm trying to remember, because you have Warren, right?
Yeah.
I think Warren got a little bit of screen time, and the only thing I remember thinking was, why are they giving him subtitles? It's like,
oh yes,
it's one of those reality TV moves where every now and then, if someone mumbles, they'll give him subtitles. And I'm like, he's speaking pretty clearly. I don't know why he's getting subtitles.
Yeah,
it's always it seems like a random treatment sometimes. That's good. Glad he got something special. Do I get any points for that?
Unfortunately, no points for subtitles for speaking English, but we'll put it on the list for maybe next season. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything else we want to say before we wrap up?
No, I thought I had something. I thought I had it loaded. I did not.
I appreciate you giving like the vocal indication that you might, because we're on Zoom and you didn't want anyone to talk over it. So you gave yourself that space and then you just pulled it right back in.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, folks, if you have any thoughts or suggestions, you can drop us a line on Instagram at TV Chef Fantasy League. If you're doing your own MasterChef Fantasy League, please tag us. We love seeing your teams. For full unedited episodes, you can check us out on YouTube. You can see if he's weird camera freaking out for the whole time.
Oh my God.
Thanks again to my co-host Sierra Kata and Iffy Wadiway. We'll be back next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
TV Chef Fantasy League is a Maximum Fun production. Our producer is Valerie Moffat. Our theme song is by Dylan Van Auken. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at TV Chef Fantasy League.